6 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 12 quarterbacks I'm ranking this week. The first guy, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So what a season it's been for Josh Allen. And he should be the front runner right now for the MVP award is Allen. And this week here, a rematch of the AFC Championship with the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. So this ball game I expect to be a shootout. Allen, the last few weeks here, he's been electric in fantasy football, putting up over 40 points in last week's ball game with 424 pass yards, 4 touchdowns, and this week here, the Chiefs give up the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And Allen this week, I got him in number 1. Number 2, we're staying in the same game. Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So we know this is going to be a shootout between these two teams. Last season, we saw it, like I said, in the AFC Championship. And what a come-from-behind victory on Monday Night Football for Mahomes in the Chiefs, where he scored 38 fantasy points. So this week here, I think 30, 35 fantasy points for Patrick Mahomes is definitely a possibility. And I got him locked in at number 2. Number 3, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. So Lamar Jackson, he started off the season on fire, but the last couple weeks here, believe it or not, defenses have limited him compared to what he did early in the season with 2 ball games in a row in week 2 and 3 with over 40 fantasy points. Week 4 versus Buffalo, only 144 pass yards, a touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 73 rushing yards. And then last week versus Cincinnati in a tough division game, they had a good game plan to get him, dropping a lot of guys back in the secondary, 174 pass yards, a touchdown, and 58 rush yards. So this week here at the New York Giants, this defense, they've been playing solid football. They've been making some stops and getting to the quarterback. But this week, I think Lamar Jackson breaks out once again like he did in week 2 and 3. And I could see him going for 35-plus fantasy points. Number 4, Tom Brady of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Bucs here, they've been starting to throw in the football more as their wide receiving core has been healthy. Mike Evans, he's been back 2 weeks now after suspension and a little bit of a hamstring tightness. Chris Godwin, he's been back the last 2 weeks. And Brady's numbers have gone up the last 2 weeks here. Week 4 versus Kansas City, he had a big ball game, 385 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, a fumble loss in a game they tried to come back and win. And then last week versus Atlanta, cracking 300 yards again, but only 1 touchdown and a 2-point conversion. So this week here, we saw Allen go for 400 yards plus and 4 touchdowns at Pittsburgh. I think Brady could go for 300 and 3 touchdowns in this one. And they give up the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And they've been getting shredded over the last few weeks. Number 5, Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Justin Herbert, he's been up and down this season here. Got off to a hot start, and then he had that rib injury at the end of week 2's ball game at Kansas City, and his numbers just haven't been as consistent as they were at the end of last season and the first 2 games this season. This week here, another division matchup for Justin Herbert versus the Denver Broncos. But right now, maybe that extra day off will help him heal a little bit more in the rib injury. We know he's a tough guy, but I just know he's not 100%. And also Keenan Allen not being in the lineup definitely hurts. But I don't think Allen's returning this week anyway. But Justin Herbert this week, I still have him as a top-notch quarterback. And I got him at 5. Number 6, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So this will be the toughest test to date for Jalen Hurts in this Eagle offense here versus the Dallas Cowboys that get to the quarterback. They get pressure, and they stop the run pretty decently. So Jalen Hurts, he's been on an MVP type of run as well. With this Eagle team, the only undefeated team in the league at 5-0. So this Cowboy team, I know they give up the 4th least amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season, but it says great weapons. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, Sanders pretty decent out of the backfield this season. And in this game, he's still a guy that's going to put up top-flight numbers. And quarterback this season, honestly, besides these top 6-7 guys I'm mentioning, it's been a crapshoot and tough to find top 12 guys every week that can produce at a high level. Number 7, Kyla Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. So Kyla Murray, it's been a pretty solid season for him for the most part. I know the last 2 out of 3 weeks he's had down performances. And the thing with him is his rushing yards have been low this season here for Kyla Murray. He's not really rushing, maybe 20, 25 yards a game at most he's been getting now for this Arizona team. He's been more of a pocket passer. He's had success while he's hit his top 2 targets, Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz. Rondale Moore hasn't really been a factor. Greg Dortch was a good option the first 3 weeks of the season, but he's been out of the rotation. And A.J. Green's a veteran who really hasn't been doing much, but this week here, a great matchup at the Seattle Seahawks that we've seen get torched over the last couple weeks in the air. We saw what Jared Goff a few weeks ago in Week 4, and then last week the Saints went up and down the field versus Seattle. So a division matchup at Seattle, a defense Kyler Murray knows, and this is going to be a shootout between these NFC West opponents. So right here, Kyler Murray, what a good matchup. I got him at 7. Number 8, Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals. So Joe Burrow so far, he's off to a slow start for the most part this season, and obviously the Bengals are too, what I think a Super Bowl hangover with a 2-3 record. So this week here, pretty decent matchup at the New Orleans Saints. We just saw Gino Smith cook them for over 30 fantasy points in last week's ball game. So Joe Burrow, he's got to get Jamar Chase back on track here. Chase, he really hasn't been the same this season like he was last season, where he went off and he broke all types of rookie records and stuff. But he's got T. Higgins, hopefully healthy in this game and playing. But Hayden Hurst, he's emerged as a good option in this offense. And Joe Mixon's got to get going a little bit as well. But right here, Joe Burrow, the last couple weeks, he still put on solid performances. 29 fantasy points. Week 4 versus Miami, 24. And then last week at Baltimore, still 19. So he's not putting up the elite numbers like he was last season, but he's still a solid fantasy option. And I got him in number 8, number 9, Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. So the Packers let one go last week in London, losing to the New York Giants. And I think Aaron Rodgers this week versus the New York Jets in Lambeau Field, he's going to come out firing. And he's starting to build a rapport with his receivers, his Rodgers. Alan Lazard looks like the number 1 over there. Romeo Dobbs, he's like a 1B in that offense right now, even though he had an off game in last week's ball game was Dobbs. But Aaron Rodgers, he's getting about 20 points per game, which is still pretty solid, especially the way the quarterbacks have been playing this season. He had 20 points you'll take each and every week from a quarterback. So a decent matchup versus the Jets, 14th least amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks. But I think Rodgers here, he's going to exploit this Jet team. It's a young secondary, and he's got weapons now. Like I said, Dobbs has emerged. Randall Cobb's been a solid slot guy once again here the last few weeks for Aaron Rodgers. And this week here, I think he has a good ball game. And I got him in number 9. Number 10, Geno Smith, the Seattle Seahawks. I can't believe I'm saying Geno Smith is cracking a top 12 league, but over the last 3 weeks here, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy football. And he's got awesome weapons, obviously, and a DK Metcalf and a Tyler Lockett. So the last few games here for him, Week 4 at Detroit, 320 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 49 yards rushing touchdown. In Week 5 at New Orleans, 268 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, and 13 rushing yards. So right here, Week 6 versus Arizona, it's going to be a shootout, I believe, like I said earlier, with Kyler Murray between these two teams. And when you got weapons like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, great wide receivers to throw to, you're going to have numbers. And these guys get a lot of yards after catch that obviously boost up Geno's numbers. So right now, with a lot of struggling quarterbacks and Gino Smith playing at a high level the last 3 weeks here, he's a guy that you cannot have not in the top 12 this week. And I got him in number 10. Yeah, no doubt about it. He could go the other way and have a bad game this week here. But from what he's been doing the last few weeks, I got him at 10. Number 11, Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings. So Kirk Cousins, he's been a solid fantasy quarterback this season. And like I said, it's hard to find consistent quarterback play this year in fantasy. But Cousins, he's pretty much good each and every week, from anywhere from 15 to the 22-point range. And when you got a star wide receiver like a Justin Jefferson as your number 1 guy, that's going to help a lot, obviously. And Adam Thielen as a solid number 2 wide receiver. So this week here, good matchup at the Miami Dolphins that give up the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So I think Cousins in this one, 200, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, probably a pick in this one. And I got him number 11, and the 12th and final quarterback I'm ranking this week here is Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. It's been tough sledding for the Los Angeles Rams over the last couple weeks here. Their offensive line's in shamble, and Stafford, really, it's Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee. Everyone else in that offense isn't doing anything. Allen Robinson's been a disappointment. Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson have done nothing at all over the last few weeks here. And the last few weeks, the numbers have taken a hit. Week 3 at Arizona, 10 fantasy points. Week 4 at San Francisco, 6.76 fantasy points. And then Week 5 versus the Cowboys, only 12.32 fantasy points. So right here, in a plus matchup versus the Carolina Panthers that really don't stop anyone. I think for this week only, Stafford cracks the top 12. And then after the bye week in Week 7, we'll see what happens, because he's missing Van Jefferson as well in this offense, I think, is Matthew Stafford. And that's another reason with the offensive line woes and not an outside receiver that could spread the field besides Cooper Kupp. That's why I think Stafford's struggling, but this week I got him at 12, so that's the top 12 quarterbacks I'm ranking here for week 6 of the fantasy football season.